Hello and welcome to Ash TV News. My name is Anna Skolakaris and I will be presenting to you the situation in the Syrian Arab Republic. Now imagine you're a Syrian citizen going through daily life and things are relatively normal. 2 weeks later, you're witnessing the president's resignation of his cabinet. What has occurred during the span of these 2 weeks is an unforeseen and long overdue rise of the Syrian people. The current president, Bashar al-Assad, has been ruling for the past 11 years. He succeeded his father, Hafez al-Assad, after his death, who ruled for 30 years. Listening to this information, we must note that the government is not undergoing any sort of democratic elections. Instead, the presidential position is being passed down in the family. To add to this, the Assad family rule has been characterized as iron-fisted. They represent an Alawite minority, which is a Shia sect, in a nation with a majority of Sunnis. Furthermore, on March 15th, peaceful protests arose when several teenagers accused of writing anti-governmental graffiti in Daraa were arrested. These peaceful protests were met with violence by police officers who reportedly shot live ammunition into crowds of protesters and used tear gas to disassemble the protest. Along with Facebook publicity, these actions have sparked pro-democratic protests putting pressure on Bashar al-Assad. Unlike the previous uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt, protesters have not called for the president to step down. They are requesting for the elimination of the emergency laws which have been in place since 1963, allowing the regime to arrest people without charge. Protesters are also rallying for less corruption, more of a voice in political affairs, and the release of political prisoners. Protests have continued in the city of Daraa and have spread to other regions of the nation too, even reaching the capital, Damascus. The president gave a speech on the 27th declaring that the recent unrest has been the act of unidentified international conspiracies. He did not refer to the topic of emergency laws, although his advisor had recently stated that they were being revised. On March 28th, he announced the resignation of his cabinet, hoping to calm the protests and appeal to the people. Interestingly enough, this resignation is not going to have any effect on his power. Looking at this issue with a more critical point of view, these revolts can bring up a lot of internal issues in the nation, including the prominent Kurdish minority, which has yet to voice its opinion on the revolution, and the religious question of the Alawite minority ruling a nation which has a majority of a Sunni population. The situation in Syria has been unprecedented. Such upheavals of the people have not been present since 1982, when Hafez al-Assad put down a Sunni revolt by massacring 10,000 protesters. Up till March 31st, human rights groups report a total of 103 deaths. The current revolution has marked a definitive path. Many questions are to be asked. What reform may be seen in Syria? Where will these protests lead to? Currently, the answers lie in the hands of the people. Syrians have long been oppressed, and the authoritarian regime has not been open to any reform. We must take into account, though, that unlike many other Middle Eastern revolutions, Bashar still has a lot of support. This support was exhibited by pro-regime demonstrations, which were held on March 26th in the capital city, Damascus. If changes were to be made, the effects would be felt well outside of Syria's borders. She is Iran's top Arab ally and one of the main nations against Israel. The president's actions from now on could determine much of Syria's future. If the people do not see change, they may follow the lead of Egyptian and Tunisian protesters and demand for the president's resignation altogether. Thank you for listening, and now on to the weather.